Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we're on Sermon Lane. We're on Sermon Lane, which is quite appropriate. And the building behind us is St. Paul's Cathedral, which is quite famous actually. So we're going to give a transcendental sermon now from St. Paul's Cathedral. So Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 11. The chapter's entitled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Alright, text 11. Who in human society can be satisfied without hearing sufficient talk of the Lord, whose lotus feet are the sum total of all places of pilgrimage, and who is worshipped by great sages and devotees? Such topics can cut off one's bondage to family affection simply by entering the holes of one's ears. Purport. Krishna Katha is so powerful that simply by entering into a person's ear it can at once give deliverance from the bondage of family affection. Family affection is an illusory manifestation of the external energy, and it is the only impetus for all mundane activities. As long as there is mundane activity and the mind is absorbed in such engagement, one has to undergo the repetition of birth and death in the current material nescience. People are most influenced by the mode of ignorance, and some are influenced by the passionate mode of material nature, and under the spell of these two modes, a living being is actuated by the material conception of life. The mundane qualities do not allow a living entity to understand his real position. The qualities of both ignorance and passion strongly bind one to the illusory bodily conception of the self. The best among the fools who are thus deluded are those who engage in altruistic activities under the spell of the material modes of passion. Bhagavad Gita, which is direct Krishna Katha, gives humanity the elementary lesson that the body is perishable and that the consciousness which is spread throughout the body is imperishable. The conscious being, the imperishable self, is eternally existent and cannot be killed under any circumstances, even after the dissolution of the body. Anyone who misunderstands this perishable body to be the self and who works for it in the name of sociology, politics, philanthropy, altruism, nationalism or internationalism under the false plea of the bodily conception of life is certainly a fool and does not know the implications of reality and unreality. Some of them are above the modes of ignorance and passion and are situated in the mode of goodness, but mundane goodness is always contaminated by tinges of ignorance and passion. Mundane goodness can enlighten one that the body and the self are different, and one in goodness is concerned with the self and not the body. But due to being contaminated, gosh, this is a long paragraph. But due to being contaminated, those in mundane goodness cannot understand the real nature of the self as a person. Their impersonal conception of the self as distinct from the body keeps them in the mode of goodness within material nature. And unless they are attracted by Krishna Katha, they will never be liberated from the bondage of material existence. Krishna Katha is the only remedy for all people of the world because it can situate one in pure consciousness of the self and liberate one from material bondage. To preach Krishna Katha all over the world, as recommended by Lord Chaitanya, is the greatest missionary activity, and all sensible men and women of the world may join in this great movement started by Lord Chaitanya.
Interesting. Very long purport. Thoughts?
No.
So it seems Prabhupada is talking a lot about altruism here. And I guess because the verse is saying, who in human society can be satisfied without hearing sufficient talk of the Lord? Such topics can cut off one's bondage to family, affection, sentiment, and holes in one's ear. So, Prabhupada kind of goes on about how, he says the biggest fools are those who think that altruistic work can really resolve all the problems or solve their own personal problems. and they're in the mode of passion, but then even those in the mode of goodness really don't understand the science of the soul. And that's really the most important altruistic work, which is to be conscious of ourselves as spiritual beings, but to give others the message of understanding themselves as spiritual beings and to help them reconnect with their eternal position as spirit soul and their eternal relationship with Krishna. And Prabhupada ends by saying that sensible men and women of the world may join in this great movement started by Lord Chaitanya, because that's the mission of Lord Chaitanya, to connect everyone back with their original relationship with God, with Krishna. And what does it say? To preach Krishna Katha all over the world. That's it. So because by this speaking about, as you said, on Sermon Lane, I've got to give a little sermon if we're on Sermon Lane.
Right. It's always Sermon Lane with you then.
Okay, anything you'd like to add or subtract, embellish upon?
No, it's a good point, that mundane goodness, because people do good deeds and charity and this and that. It's known as mundane goodness, and it can enlighten the one that the body and self are different, but still there's a certain type of conditioning that doesn't all, because you get comfortable in that level of mundane goodness, and it's in form of sense. It's gratifying. So we don't want to go beyond that to something a little more, one could say, selfless, really. Yeah. Which is ironic, because someone in the mundane goodness may think, well, I am selfless because I do so much and I think like this and I philosophize. But it's interesting because it stays on the bodily level. Subtly we don't want to give up that comfort or that attachment.
Very nice. Okay, text 12. Your friend, great sage, Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, has already described the transcendental qualities of the Lord in his great work, the Mahabharata. But the whole idea is to draw the attention of the mass of people to Krishna Katha, Bhagavad Gita, through their strong affinity for hearing mundane topics. Interesting. So because someone has a natural tendency to hear mundane topics, so in this way, Vyasadeva wrote like the Mahabharata, because it's full of apparently mundane topics. Of course, we understand the Mahabharata is, includes Krishna, so nothing in connection with Krishna can be mundane. But at the same time, because there's intrigue, there's war, there's there's like, what else is there? Romance, and all of these different things.
Family affection, and disputes. Which is interesting,
Yeah. So all of these things it's attractive. So basically the idea is how to attract the mundane people, to give them topics that they may be naturally allured to, but at the same time when they come towards that, then you inject, or they understand. So you understand that, you inject Krishna consciousness. So anyway, let me just read the purport. Right. The great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas is the author of all Vedic literature, of which his works Vedanta Sutra, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Mahabharata are very popular readings. As stated in Bhagavatam 1.4.25, Srila Vyasadeva compiled the Mahabharata for the less intelligent class of men who take more interest in mundane topics than in the philosophy of life. The Vedanta Sutra was compiled for persons already above the mundane topics, who might already have tasted the bitterness of so-called happiness in mundane affairs. The first aphorism of Vedanta Sutra is Atato Brahma Jigyasa, i.e., only when one has finished the business of mundane inquiries in the marketplace of sense gratification can one make relevant inquiries regarding Brahman, the transcendence. So nice, isn't it? I love that. That's really powerful, the way the Prabhupada phrases that. Those persons who are busy with the mundane inquiries which fill the newspapers and other such literatures are classified as Stri, Shudra, Dvija Bandhus, or women, the laborer class, and unworthy sons of the higher classes, Brahmin, Kshatriya, and Vaishyas. Such less intelligent men cannot understand the purpose of Vedanta Sutra, although they may make a show of studying the sutras in a perverted way. The real purpose of Vedanta Sutra is explained by the author himself in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and anyone trying to understand Vedanta Sutra without reference to Srimad Bhagavatam is certainly misguided. Such misguided persons who are interested in the mundane affairs of philanthropic and altruistic work under the misconception of the body as the self could better take advantage of the Mahabharata, which was specifically compiled by Srila Vyasadeva for their benefit. Interesting. The great author who has compiled the Mahabharata in such a way that the less intelligent class of men that's it? Okay. So, the great author has compiled the Mahabharata in such a way that the less intelligent class of men who are more interested in mundane topics may read the Mahabharata with great relish, and in the course of such mundane happiness can also take advantage of Bhagavad Gita, the preliminary study of Srimad Bhagavatam or the Vedanta Sutra. Srila Vyasadeva had no interest in writing a history of mundane activities other than to give less intelligent persons a chance for transcendental realization through Bhagavad Gita. Vidura's reference to Mahabharata indicates that he had heard of the Mahabharata from Vyasadeva, his real father, while he was away from home and was touring the place of pilgrimage. Okay, so a couple of statements and a question. So the statement is that basically the Vedanta Sutra is beyond mundane topics and is really for a more advanced person, although the Srimad Bhagavatam is considered the cream of Vedanta Sutra. So mainly because it is not only about mundane topics, it's all about Krishna and leading and directing one completely and wholly and solely to Krishna, whereas the Vedanta Sutra doesn't do that fully. So really Srimad Bhagavatam is the topmost Vedic literature. At the same time, as Prabhupada says here, if one isn't advanced enough to kind of get the nectar from Vedanta Sutra or Srimad Bhagavatam, then one should read Mahabharata, and then in the course of reading Mahabharata, one will come in contact with Bhagavad Gita, right? And get the preliminary lessons from Bhagavad Gita, which is the introduction to Vedanta Sutra, Srimad Bhagavatam. Now my question, and I think it's interesting, is that Vidura here is referencing Mahabharata.
Right.
But he's in the Mahabharata.
Right. That's what I was going to
He's part of the Mahabharata. So I guess the thing is that, of course, the St. Paul's Cathedral was designed and more or less built by Sir Christopher Wren, right?
Wren.
So in the days when it was being built, people were talking about it, right? And they were discussing how it's being built and then it'd be finished, and talking about that. Now we talk about it in the past, but there was a period of time where it was in progress, and actually I think it took them many years to build St. Paul's Cathedral. I'm not mistaken. I don't know if Sir Christopher Wren actually saw it complete, did he?
I don't know. I don't know.
Somehow it took a long time to build it. But the point being that, okay, so Vidura was around at that time, and Vyasadeva was obviously compiling the Mahabharata at the time of the history when it had happened. So, he had gone away, the war all happened, the battle of Kurukshetra all happened, so all of that could have been written. So maybe it's just that he was aware at the time that Vyasadeva was compiling the Mahabharata. Of course, we were hearing the other day from Chaitanya Charan Prabhu that, he the Mahabharata goes well past the time of the Battle of Kurukshetra. That kind of happens in the middle of it. There's quite a bit that happens afterwards. So, yeah, I guess it's possible to be discussing about the thing that happened while it's in the progress of happening, but even it'll go on well after that. So it must have been known that Vyasadeva was compiling the Mahabharata at that time, so therefore he brought it up. Anyway, that's my thought. What did you think?
Yeah, that's plausible.
I love it. You know, it's like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, you know, eloquence. True eloquence is truth spoken concisely. So there you go. Okay. Read one more.
Okay. Text 13. For one who is anxious to engage constantly in hearing such topics, Krishna Katha gradually increases his indifference towards all other things. Such constant remembrance of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna by the devotee who has achieved transcendental bliss vanquishes all his miseries without delay. Purport. We must certainly know that on the absolute plane, Krishna Katha and Krishna are one and the same. The Lord is the absolute truth, and therefore his name, form, quality, etc., which are all understood to be Krishna Katha, are non-different from him. The police. Bhagavad Gita, being spoken by the Lord, is as good as the Lord himself. When a sincere devotee reads Bhagavad Gita, this is as good as seeing the Lord face to face in his personal presence. But this is not so for the mundane wrangler. All the potencies of the Lord are there when one reads Bhagavad Gita, provided it is read in the way recommended in the Gita by the Lord himself. One cannot foolishly manufacture an interpretation of Bhagavad Gita and still bring about transcendental benefit. Anyone who tries to squeeze some artificial meaning or interpretation from Bhagavad Gita for an ulterior motive is not Shraddha Dana Pumsa, which means one engaged anxiously in bona fide hearing of Krishna Katha. Such a person cannot derive any benefit from reading Bhagavad Gita, however great a scholar he may be in the estimation of a layman. The Shraddha Dana or faithful devotee can actually derive all the benefits of Bhagavad Gita because by the omnipotency of the Lord he achieves the transcendental bliss which vanquishes attachment and nullifies all concomitant material miseries. Only the devotee by his factual experience can understand the import of this verse spoken by Vidura. The pure devotee of the Lord enjoys life by constantly remembering the lotus feet of the Lord by hearing Krishna Katha. For such a devotee, there is no such thing as material existence, and the most advertised bliss of Brahmananda is like a fig for the devotee who is in the midst of the transcendental ocean of bliss.
Very nice. Reflections?
Yeah, it's a test, I guess, of progress on the spiritual path to the degree that we actually naturally let go of things we were doing before. Not artificially, but we kind of like, whatever, you know. No, we don't even think about it, we don't even say whatever. I mean, when I was first reading the book seriously and that, I was very much addicted to, maybe Londoners would know this anyway, EastEnders. I still know what happened in the first episode 20 odd years ago. And it was a joke in the family because it came on twice a week and everyone knew don't talk to her and don't talk to each other when it's on. And it was a big thing. And my uncle used to ring up during that time just to annoy me and all that. So I remember thinking, this process, if it can actually, and I actually remember thinking, if it can wean me off my obsession and attachment to this soap opera, it must be real. And it did. And I was very impressed because I didn't look back, genuinely didn't look back. And still don't, which is interesting. I don't even want to know what's going on. You know, you see it in the news or whatever, but genuine no interest from that day of just fully committing.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's nice. That's a really nice share. I appreciate that. And,
that was my poison anyway.
Yeah, I think, you know, yeah, there are worse poisons. But he was such a huge Chelsea fan.
Oh dear.
Time they played, it was the same. You know, the family were like, okay, don't disturb Dad, don't. And if they lost, everyone knew just to stay away because he would become ferociously angry all day, all weekend, or whatever. and it would take him ages to get over it, and if they won, he became elated. But then once he started taking up to the practice of Krishna consciousness seriously, it continued for some time, but then actually after a while and now he doesn't even watch the games, he doesn't follow it at all, and he realizes it's like, it was just some mundane thing to try to satisfy me. But once you become satisfied or satiated within by reconnecting with our original position and identity, or reconnecting with Krishna, then these other things that were filling that gap in that space, they don't seem to be so important anymore, naturally, like you said, not artificially. Like, oh no, I can't watch it, It's just like you're not interested anymore.
You just don't even think. It's interesting, you just don't even look back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You just
Well, you might look back, but you're not attracted. You're just not attached. You're like,
no,
oh God, I used to be like so attached to this, and now I don't even care. You know?
Analogy, I mean, it's like a child. You know when they hold your phone, for nowadays anyway, and you're like, give it back now, and then you give them something else, they just drop it without even thinking. They drop it literally without even thinking, and they go forward for the other thing. And it's like that. It's like, what phone? You know, you don't even think. Like, you just got the higher taste or something else.
Nice points. Okay, so we're going to conclude here on this beautiful sunny day.
Yes.
Outside of St. Paul's Cathedral, a holy place of pilgrimage.
Yes.
For people all over the world.
Yeah.
And they come here to see this beautiful place. So you're getting darshan of St. Paul's Cathedral here today. But we're going to close, and we thank you all very much.
Hare Krishna.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.